Sponsorships are quite literally the leading form of income for creators. And I think that is the worst possible thing that anybody can do. In fact, when I look through our previous episodes that we've done with our guests, a lot of them have gotten to the point like where all of their income or most of their income are not from those brand partnership deals, because when they rely on them so heavily, they can ebb and flow their income and cause a lot of inconsistencies. And to the point where some of them, like our guest that we had on, Sarah Beth Yoga, she has none. Like she's like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not letting another brand have control over when or how I make my income. Sometimes doesn't matter how great of a relationship or how much time you have spent cultivating that relationship. If a company gets acquired or they make a big sweeping change, you can be out that income immediately. At any moment, you can lose your income, and it's important to always have another thing in your back pocket, which is why networking is important, which is why staying in contact with your competitors is important. Keeping an eye on what's going on is important. Make sure that you have really intentional things in place that allow for you to switch and stop working with somebody after a certain amount of time, that you can say or do things. Like just really protect yourself and the identity that you have attached to what you're doing with those brands, because you never know, again, when they're going to go away. I'm diving into the often volatile world of creator sponsorships. While sponsorships are a major revenue stream for creators, they are far from guaranteed. In fact, relying too heavily on them can lead to sudden and unexpected losses. In this episode, I will share with you 3 personal stories about my own experience with sponsorships, both the highs and the truly devastating lows. From building brand partnerships from scratch to losing sponsorships due to sudden company changes and internal mismanagement, these are the real lessons that you really need to hear. So in this episode, I will cover how a change in company ownership can instantly wipe out years of a partnership. Why no matter how strong your relationship is with a brand, budget cuts can end it all. And the importance of diversifying your revenue streams and not relying solely on sponsorships. I'm hoping by the end of this episode, you'll have a better understanding of the risk involved and, more importantly, how to protect yourself from financial instability in the creator economy. Let's do this. The Funded YouTuber is brought to you by Gigastar. I have been around the creator block for 15 years. I got started making MySpace pages for businesses, and I have hit every social network and every opportunity along the way. So when the opportunity to have sponsorships came into my life as a creator, it was a really incredible opportunity for me. I never have had a really huge following on my YouTube channel. In fact, as of the time of this recording, I still have just over 40,000 subscribers. I have been able, though, to sustain a 6-figure income and be the sole breadwinner for my family while my husband recovers from his PTSD. So sponsorships for a very long time were a very important part of how I did my business. But I had some really specific situations that happened along the way that not just affected me, but they affected all the other partners that were in the programs that I was in. I think it's really important for us to dive into like the impact that partnerships play on the creator economy, because sponsorships are quite literally the leading form of income for creators. And I think that is the worst possible thing that anybody can do. In fact, when I look through our previous episodes that we've done with our guests, a lot of them have gotten to the point like where all of their income or most of their income are not from those brand partnership deals, because when they rely on them so heavily, they can ebb and flow their income and cause a lot of inconsistencies. And to the point where some of them, like our guest that we had on, Sarah Beth Yoga, she has none. Like she's like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not letting another brand have control over when or how I make my income. So I want to share these stories with you and then like the lessons I think that you can learn from them. So first I'm going to dive on to my biggest one. Now I have been a StreamYard girly since StreamYard came out. Like even before it was public to everybody, I was in the beta program and I absolutely loved the tool. My sole reason for switching from BeLive to StreamYard was I was able to have custom graphics. Now, I have a multimedia art background, so graphic design and how things look online are really important to me. And I didn't like having like this weird little like thought bubble in the corner with like a round and curly, and I couldn't do graphics and overlays and pictures and things like that. And so someone had suggested to me that I should check out StreamYard. I went into their private StreamYard beta group. I joined the tool. It was like $10 a month. It was wonderful. And it was the coolest tool because it was so intentional and thoughtful. But the more I used the tool, the more I realized that the secret to the success of the StreamYard tool had nothing to do with the tool itself. And it had everything to do with the founders, Dan and Gage, who were the leaders of this company. They had founded it and they were just building something that they wanted to use that also could help people. And they've always kept true to like the foundation, which is it needs to be simple, easy to use, and not require a lot of bandwidth. So anybody in any place can use this tool and not have to worry about not having the right tech or not being good quality or not working or being too complicated and require all these extra bells and whistles. And so the first partnership opportunity that we had together was in March of 2019. So I launched the Women of Video as a live stream. I partnered with TubeBuddy for this, which we'll talk about actually next. And I just wanted to have a really beautiful way to do the Women of Video podcast on the TubeBuddy channel so that it would match the quality of the content that they were producing on a regular basis. And I promoted it. I was like, this is sponsored by TubeBuddy and StreamYard. It was this great thing. It was great graphics. It looked so cool. All of the things. And then when I went to go talk to Gage, like, hey, did you catch that? He's like, did you even use StreamYard? And I was like, yeah, I just made all the custom graphics for everything. He's like, I didn't even know our tool could do that. So I was deeply ingrained in what they were doing. And so I had a live show that I was doing at the time called Marketing for Your Boring Business. That was a podcast as well. And I started doing some video series on my YouTube channel about like how to use live streaming. And I talked about how to use StreamYard as a tool. And this was probably around the end of 2019. So March 2020 happens. Everyone goes home come COVID. And everyone is like, how do I create content? How do I go live? How do I do this stuff? And StreamYard blows up as a tool. Blows up. Like it is probably it was like Zoom, like everybody had it. Everybody was using it. Everyone was trying to figure out how to live stream and do stuff. And I probably would argue 2020 was probably like the epitome of like the live streaming era for sure. And they grew so fast, then they weren't ready for it. They had to quickly hire a whole bunch of like staff and support. They were doing crazy live streams, but they still had not invested a lot of time in their YouTube channel to solve problems. Like, how do we do things? So I, on my channel, was having this insane growth too, because I had the only video about how to use StreamYard on YouTube. In fact, my video ultimately had more views than theirs. So I did this whole series where I was like, here's how to use a tool, here are all the individual things. And I built my own email list of StreamYard customers by giving them free overlays, which are like the graphics and stuff that you see on it. And it was over like 6,500 people. And I was like, okay, the time has come for StreamYard to give me money, because I was in their affiliate program, which was still new. But the problem is I was solving problems for existing StreamYard customers. I wasn't helping them get new customers. And so it became this whole issue of like, I am getting hundreds of thousands of views on my videos, but I'm not making any affiliate money off all these people that I'm helping because they've already signed up. So I reached out to them and I was like, hey, you guys need help with partnerships and I want to help you get more partners and I want to get paid for this. And so we started a contract working together, and I would do referral connections and we bring people on. And some of those original creators on the StreamYard program were there. And as their original first influencer and like content creator for them, like it was a really point of pride for me. I was so excited about everything that they were doing. So in the beginning of 2021, StreamYard sold. They sold to a company called Hopin. Now, at the time, Hopin had this really great platform that was geared towards doing online events, and StreamYard was a natural fit. But what was so genius about Hopin is that they just let StreamYard do their thing. Like Gage and Dan stayed on and did all the development work, and they put more resources in place to help them. So they had like a marketing director and partnership coordinator and more things to make the tool work really well and the community run really smoothly. And it was just running really well. In fact, like they continued to be profitable up until they were sold again. So Hopin decided to dissolve as a company. And so they were selling off all of the assets and the tools that they had acquired or that they had developed to other people. The biggest one I had seen, they had made like a Zoom sort of competitor. I don't even remember what it's called. And I remember how much I enjoyed it because it had so many StreamYard like features, but then it like just went away. So like June of 2024, and I was aware about the buyout, and I was like, oh no, this is going to be really interesting because Hopin sold StreamYard to a company called Bend & Spoon. And Bend & Spoon is a company in Italy, and they got very successful because they were in charge of all the contact tracing in Italy, and they have since acquired a lot of other companies as well. And so Hopin sold to this company, and they did it against the wishes of Gage and Dan. Gage and Dan actually tried to buy it back. And I guess it just wasn't enough. And it was devastating for them because they never expected the board to just like turn on them in that way because they had done so much work together. So I just keep my ear to the ground. I keep making my videos because I've been in a partnership contract with them since the end of 2020, making content, building them connections. I have gone to events with them, like live streams with them. I've done so much with them. Like Desiree in so many circles is still considered the StreamYard girl. Like it's just the very ingrained in that way. Then I get an email from my partnership coordinator. She's like, Bend & Spoon is canceling all contracts. And I was like, what? She's like, yeah, it's not just that they're stopping working with you. They're going to stop working with everybody. And they're going to be eventually laying off all of the American team and moving everything to Italy. So not only did I lose my monthly income that I had been getting for years from them and the devastating loss of a relationship that I had cultivated for 6 years, but so were my peers, my friends that were creators. So were all the people that I worked with at StreamYard. Like it was devastating. And you would hope that when a company buys, like I said, because we saw this with Hopin when they acquired StreamYard, they understood that they weren't just buying a tool. They were buying a community and a culture. And Bend & Spoon has done nothing but destroy all of that. They recently made an update at the time of this recording where they are raising the price of everything 40%. And they are no previous for life accounts, discount codes, any of that. None of that qualifies. And it's just a real problem. And like some of my friends who are bigger creators than me that had bigger contracts, like really good contracts, like they lost major income and they're considering, the next steps of what they're going to do to protect themselves and their brand and their incomes. Like it's a mess. And so this is when I say so the first lesson for you in here is to understand that it sometimes doesn't matter how great of a relationship or how much time you have spent cultivating that relationship. If a company gets acquired or they make a big sweeping change, you can be out that income immediately. And that takes so much control. And then to me, when I think of these big partnerships, sometimes I think of them like jobs. Like they're at the will and happiness of it's the will and pleasure of the company to see if you're making them happy and you're making them money and you help their bottom line. But sometimes they just have a different agenda and that can screw you out of a lot of income. And this is this has been so hard for me. I'm in the process of finding new partnerships and working through these deals and figuring out how to sever this brand relationship. But I am mad about how this whole thing has gone down and there's nothing you can do about it. And it literally feels like I got fired from a job. And so loyalty can only go so far when people sell their companies or get acquired or do different things. So my next example is with Women of Video Podcast. Now, the Women of Video Podcast started off as the Women of YouTube. I rebranded it in 2022 because I wanted to open up more video opportunities like live streaming, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, Pinterest, all this kind of stuff. Limiting it to YouTube was limiting the opportunity that women could have. But when I started the podcast back in 2019, where I was a live stream on the TubeBuddy YouTube channel, it went really, really well. And TubeBuddy was really happy with it. And I ended up talking with Phil, who's a former founder and owner of TubeBuddy, about it. And we were like, let's do this. Let's make this more. And so we agreed on a price and they hosted and we co-produced the podcast together because I didn't have the capacity to do the YouTube channel because it's so much work. But podcasts, I had the ability to do. But I always recorded it as a video podcast, which is, I think, something I always did that was really smart. I think maybe the first 10 episodes weren't, and that was mainly because I did them on location. So fast forward, we're doing all this great work. We launch it in October 2019 at Bit Summit. We're doing it. We're going through. And 2020 happens. And what happens? I get this email from TubeBuddy that they were bought out by a company named Ben. And Ben is this tech company owned by Microsoft, and it's this whole thing. And they're had this mission to take the creator world by storm and do all this stuff and blah, 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 blah. And they decided to cut my budget. They're we like what you're doing. We support what you're doing. We have DEI budget, which is diversity, equality, and inclusion. And they cut the budget again. They cut the budget in half, and they weren't giving me the same support that I was getting before. And I was like, well, that's not acceptable. Like, so I'm doing the same amount of work with less support and less money. No, thank you. Well, at the same time, I was talking with my friend Alan, who's been a guest on this podcast. And at the time, he was doing a ton of coaching work with vidIQ. And vidIQ is a direct competitor of TubeBuddy. When we want to think about how these YouTube growth tools work, TubeBuddy is very like logistical, and vidIQ is all about like the data of what you need to do to make better content. And at the time, like I knew TubeBuddy wasn't as good as it could have been compared to what vidIQ is doing. And so my buddy Alan was like, I mean, if you're unhappy, I know vidIQ would welcome you because they're looking for more opportunities to diversify because they know that they have a lot to offer, but they have a very male heavy audience and representation. So they want to expand. And they had just recently hired a new CMO who was from Spotify, and he was looking to like make big changes and do great things. And he did a lot of great partnerships and great things. And I went over there. They paid me more. I got an ad budget. I got promotion on the YouTube channel. I got podcast spotting on their existing podcast. I got to be a guest on the YouTube channel. Like all these great things happened. I went with them to events. Like it was fantastic. It was an amazing partnership. And so the lesson that's attached to this is when one door closes, like a company gets acquired, which is what a lot of my stories actually tend to be about. When a company gets acquired or there's a change of ownership or like a loss of money, there are other solutions out there for you. It is okay to go to your competitors and be like, yo, like, let's do this. I had gotten a ton of messages from my friends during that time that were like, oh man, what happened? How did you do it? What was it like? Because our creator educator space, like it's a very like, we're close knit. We all know each other. We all support each other and help each other because we know we have like different verticals and niches that we specialize in. And they're like, how did you do it? Oh my gosh, can you hook me up? Can you send me the message? Like, I want to leave too. Like, how is this different? Like, was there a problem? Like, it was so interesting how like the behind the scenes, like questioning had come into place. And that's when I had learned in that moment that like at any moment you can lose your income, and it's important to always have another thing in your back pocket, which is why networking is important, which is why staying in contact with your competitors is important. Keeping an eye on what's going on is important. So if you ever are in a position where you need to pivot to a different sponsor or a different opportunity, really make sure that your ducks are in a row to protect you from doing that. So make sure when you're reviewing your contracts, you don't have a limitation on competitors. Make sure that you have really intentional things in place that allow for you to switch and stop working with somebody after a certain amount of time, that you can say or do things. Like just really protect yourself and the identity that you have attached to what you're doing with those brands, because you never know, again, when they're going to go away. So when I got started with social media marketing back in 2010, I spent the vast majority of my time explaining to people what social media was, what social media marketing was, and why they should not just have like their kid do it for them. And so I got to this point when I was like selling my packages to people. I would include this thing called the Facebook landing page, which is like a like gate you hit. If you hit the Facebook like page, you got like a coupon or a discount. It was a whole thing back then. And I would offer them 60 days of posting for them on social media. And it was so manual. Like I didn't have a way to do it. And so I remember I messaged my dad, who's a programmer. I was like, can you make me something that will allow for me to like auto publish? Because this is so much work. And he emailed me back like the next day and was like, I could do this, or you could just go buy this thing that's already doing this. That way I don't have to do it. And I was like, sold. And it was a company called Sendable. Now Sendable has been around for years. I am probably one of their oldest customers, if not their oldest customer. I still use them as a tool for my social media management tool. So 2011, it was $12 a month. And I was like really scared about having to pay that every month. Like it really freaked me out. I don't know why, it just did. So fast forward to probably like 2018, 17, like 19 in those eras. I had connected with Gavin, the founder, and we had talked and known each other for years. We had done some sponsorship work through like the Marketing for Your Boring Business podcast. I was just a big raving fan of their tool. I gave them some coaching and advice and consulting for them on different things. We just did stuff. Well, then they got acquired, which is not bad. It was fine. And it still allows for the tool to function amazingly well to this day. But they had connected me to the marketing team and they're like, hey, they really want to do work with YouTube. And I was like, yes, this is amazing. Now at the time, this was 2021 when we had the connection to do the marketing work. And I had just moved. I had just made a major, massive life change. Now, I moved all the time as a military spouse and a military kid, but this was a very big, scary move because we made this move on our own without any military connection, without like a job. We just wanted a different life and a different opportunity for us and our kids. And we were living in Phoenix and the weather was horrible. So we just made a cross country move to Michigan. And I had to buy, I had a mortgage and all this stuff. And so before, like probably a week before I signed the papers on my new home that I got to move into, I signed a contract with StreamYard to create a video series for them. And so it was going to be 13 weeks, 13 episodes, and it was going to be all about like how to use StreamYard, why they choose StreamYard, like methods and tools. And it was a very intentional, like how to be better at social media and let Sendable be part of that process for you. I had this empty basement studio that I like instantly went to like Home Depot and I had to like buy background stuff for and do all these great things. Like it was amazing. It was a really fun project I really enjoyed doing. And they really liked it too. But here's where the cautionary tale comes into place. The reason I was creating this content for and with them was because they were wanting to use it as a part of their marketing plan. So their team was going to need to take the content and repurpose it down. Now, I had offered to do this as a part of our packaging because I have a team in place that does this stuff. And they're like, no, we have a team too. We can just do it. And it never happened. Like they never published the blogs. They never did the social posts. They never added it into their drip campaigns. They never gave it the attention because they were so busy with all of the other things that they were doing. They didn't take the time to integrate it into what they were doing. And that sucked because they didn't do that. I lost the sponsorship deal. And I was really bummed because again, it's good money, but it was just one of those things. It's like, again, another company that just like, it didn't work out because you didn't do what you needed to do, or like a system beyond the control of what I was doing. It was all these things. And so again, when other people aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, it can affect your income. All of these examples had nothing to do with how good of a creator I was. It had nothing to do with the results that I got. It had nothing to do with how much they liked me or didn't like me. It had everything to do with choices that they made that I had no control over. So when you're thinking about your income, you have to ask yourself, how much control do I have? And that is why I think it's so much more valuable for us to, as creators, not ignore the big three, the AdSense, the affiliates, the sponsorship deals. It's to think, okay, once I get going and I have a community or a brand or something, what are the things I can do that are sustainable, that are going to give me longevity for my income? And for me, and what I do, it's service. I have a service that I do. I have a team that does the work. It's all of those pieces. Like that is how I build sustainability. You can build sustainability too. You can invest in better production, better partnership deals. You can build a service. You can use a tool like Gigastar to help make that happen for you. You can do a drop and get an influx of capital into your business so that you can invest in the next step of sustainability for your business. Like there are so many opportunities and options for you in a way that we've never had before in the creator economy. And so it's really important for you to think, especially as like we're wrapping up 2024 and heading into the next year, ask yourself, what can I be doing to build sustainability and growth with my income that is not dependent on a brand or a tool in the way that AdSense or sponsorship income does? So I'll let you think on that. And until next week, go get that money. Peace.
The Funded YouTuber is brought to you by Gigastar, a parent company of Gigastar Market, an SEC-registered funding portal and member of FINRA. Learn more at gigastar.io. Neither Gigastar nor its affiliated companies provide legal, regulatory, financial, or tax advice. Any opinions expressed herein are those of the authors and are the informational purposes only. The information and opinions expressed herein are subject to change without notice and do not take into account the particular investments, objectives, financial situation, or needs of any specific investors.